evening, everybody. Welcome to Elephant in the Room. Hi, Taranjeet. How are you?
Very well, very well. Good evening to you, Mui Han. Excellent. It's great to be back. I can't believe it's our second month.
Yes, we are crossing into the 21st. Today is the 21st episode. Man days wise or weekdays wise, we are in our second month. You're right, man. So for those who have joined us, so we are
Wow.
very, very thankful for all your support and continuously tuning into our show from Mondays to Fridays. For those who are joining us for the first time, welcome to Elephant in the Room. We are very happy to have you with us. As usual, if you can do us a kind favor, do a share or watch party so that we reach out to more folks in that sense. Okay. So, Taranjeet, what are we talking about today?
Excellent. So we've had a fantastic last week. If you remember, we had the opportunity to hear from learned individuals spread around several countries within Southeast Asia, and in fact, out of North Africa as well. And in case you've missed this opportunity to watch these clips, don't worry about it. It's all on the YouTube channel entitled Elephant in the Room. And as we go through this evening, we will actually make specific comments as to which video episodes should you be looking for which particular individual that we've interviewed. So a couple of things here are playing out, Mui Han. The great thing about it is we've had a variety of individuals, learned individuals in their own right. And it was interesting. There were very nice snippets that we can take away. And today we'll be talking about that. So maybe you want to share with us who we went through and who was on the channel last week, Mui Han.
Okay, so good. I like the idea because I think we always, this is the second time I think every Monday we will try to recap the previous week, especially we have guests, and because every time we have guests, they have got just so much input to share with us, and by the time we finish, we are unable to process it all and discuss further. So I think a show like this gives us very good time to look at it in that sense. Maybe I'll just quickly pull out the slide so that then we can get on to the discussion, right? So last Tuesday, which is on the 5th of May, if you were with us, we had the proud pleasure of actually hosting Dr. Tarek Dasuki, right? All the way from Cairo, Egypt in that sense. And he gave a very interesting perspective to all of us of how COVID-19 was impacting Egypt as well as in North Africa in that sense, right? So some of the points I wanted to raise for our discussion this afternoon, these are the 7 pertinent points that we have collated. Probably, maybe I would just like to ask Taranjeet, which is the one that speaks to you the most and why?
Okay, good point. Let's start it off. So for me, there were several key takeaways, starting out with the fact that it is a shock to the system. It's a shock to the Egyptian system, as how Dr. Tarek had mentioned. And companies are not ready. He is very, very clear that companies are not ready and they will be drastically impacted by this. And this will also impact the consumer base, the employees as a whole. However, he also sees very nicely that it's positive. He feels that this last couple of years, with IR4 coming on board, the opportunity to revitalize the corporate sector, to revitalize the public sector, I think in his mind, not enough was done. Now, this provides an opportunity for these organizations to reframe, rethink, and reimagine what the future will look like. He talked about staffing. He talked about conscious addressing of overstaffing in this regard. And he feels very clearly that the Egyptians will go through a significant reduction in manpower, at least from a corporate perspective, and that will lead to implications on work. However, he did also say collaboration is key. And the ability to now for organizations to collaborate not only within, but also externally becomes critical. I truly liked his concept of boom and bloom. Let me repeat that: bloom and boom. So there's two things there. And he talked about the fact that yes, there will be a booming impact out of all of this. And from that booming impact, there will be a blooming impact taking place for on entities and organizations. And this forced change actually will augur well for the country, despite the pain that organizations and people are going to go through. So I liked his positivism. And we started off the week, Mihan, with a very positive slant, which was absolutely amazing because until today, we've been getting doom and gloom. But from Dr. Tarek, we got this very different perspective. And it resonates with me, quite honestly. Yes, there will be hardship, but you know what? We can overcome this. Mihan?
I think I particularly like the fact that he turned it around in that sense to say that I think we all know this is the elephant in the room where there is a crisis or chaos. There's lies the opportunity, and this opportunity is needed to be framed in a positive manner or in a perspective. And I really enjoy that perspective to actually help us to refocus reframe our thinking to say, because yes, life is going to be different. Let's stop calling it challenging or difficult per se, but it's going to be different definitely. But yes, this is how I think things are moving, and always change is the inevitable. So yes, with that, for those who have just joined us, welcome again to Elephant in the Room. We welcome you to the show. Today we are doing a quick recap of all our guests last week, and Taranjeet just shared with us his insights, interacted with Dr. Tarek Dasuki all the way from Egypt last Tuesday. And we will be sharing you the link later on in the comment section where you can watch that again from our YouTube channel. So one thing I wanted to say on Dr. Tarek, for those of us who are thinking of actually entering the North Africa market or Egypt per se, one was the important point of the informal economy. And this one triggered me a bit because easily about 12 or 13 years ago, I was working for someone, and we all had a trip to the Middle East. Wasn't Africa though, but Middle East, quite near Cairo actually. And we come to realize that the informal economy in these countries are actually much more powerful, more insightful than the formal economy. So to just give you a perspective, because my ex-boss wanted to explore that market, so the natural behavior was to actually get in touch with the trade officers and the people in that sense. But we come to realize actually it's very hard to talk to them because they don't have much understanding of how businesses work in a place in like Middle East in that sense. And these are supposed to be attaches that based there. But soon enough, through some networking, we get to know people very informally. And before you know it, that's where business happens. And when Dr. Tarek talked about the informal economy in Egypt, that really resonated with me because he talked about, you want to ask for real funds from all this to build the Suez Canal, the second channel, you can't get, but you ask the Egyptians, overnight the money just came, and that was amazing. So that was Dr. Dasuki. Dr. Tarek Dasuki, and we had a good time with him. So I want to talk about our next guest the following day, which was Verticka Kohli, all the way from India, New Delhi. And I think Verticka really rocked the show, man. What do you think?
Absolutely. I thoroughly enjoyed her understanding of the playing field. The way she had expressed herself was quite intriguing. The way she was bringing in and stitching in the overarching picture was great for me. Yeah, absolutely. So there were a couple of things here that played out. Mui Han, I will not steal your thunder. Back to you, Mui Han.
Sure. So I think one of the things that we realized after talking to Verticka was, I think this whole idea of the magnitude of India, because I think globally, most of us are very attached or preoccupied with China and the US. But we don't realize that actually the other big boy is actually India, because of the sheer volume they have. So with a population of 1.4 billion per se, and just the number of SMEs, I think that's the one that touch or blow our minds, because we can never imagine 42 million SME registered SMEs, and in Malaysia itself, just 42 million itself is more than the population of Malaysia. That's for sure, right? But we are grappling with the less than a million SMEs, and I think this is the magnitude of it, I would say, really changes the perspective. What do you think, Taranjeet, in your opinion?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I like the way she was stitching in the story. Perhaps you could draw out on the slide, Mui Han. She was stitching the story about how you now have the ability to impact through the SMEs, the employees at large, and liquidity has started to play out. That was one key takeaway from me. Like anywhere, although governments are putting in money for stimulus packages, there will be instances where this money will run out. And so what can we now do to ensure that that level of sustainability continues? And we hear the same thing with Rifki after this. What also got me was the ability to innovate. Now, India comes across as a very innovative, which is quite surprising to a lot of people, but it's a very innovative country. We can do a lot more with a lot less. And I really like the fact that she gave an example of ventilators coming out at 250 or 300, 500 USD, when the average rate that you're looking at is 2,000, 3,000 USD. And that's absolutely amazing, the ability to rethink and reframe. We understand that there will be an increase in COVID cases. She went away to talk about how the railways are now being used as potential makeshift hospitals. They've got tons of railway carriages lying around. This can now be done, and that's exactly what they did. And to that, kudos to the Indian economy, kudos to the Indian entrepreneurs and the authorities that be. What I thoroughly enjoyed when she was talking about this was the implication of a new way of working. She called it Gen COVID. Now that really struck out. Now we've got Gen X's and Gen Z's and Gen Y's and what have you, and now we've got this Gen COVID where we are all part of this. Different ways of working. This whole mental health and well-being coming out into play. We by nature, humanity by nature, are social creatures, but all of a sudden we are having to find ourselves forced in an environment where we cannot socialize. And that has significant negative implications to our well-being. Mui Han?
I think one idea that I resonate and recollect, as she was saying, that I think when she introduced the term Generation COVID or Gen COVID to start with, it is actually interesting to say that maybe a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, if we look back at this moment or this period in time, probably we need to maybe this will appear in management books in moving forward or business books in moving forward. It's a very interesting period to be studied of how collectively or globally, when we are subjected to a lockdown, which we have not seen this over the last 100 years. I think the last time it happened was in the Spanish flu. How it transformed not only businesses, but behaviors of people and things like that. And I want to share a particular perspective of my good friend, Alex Tan. Alex Tan is a very well-known EQ coach, as well as he does a lot of. So he suggested this idea about a few weeks ago. He was interviewed on Bernama to talk about we should actually be practicing physical distancing rather than social distancing, because there's a big difference between the two in that sense. So to make us safe, actually we need more physical distancing. We need the 1 meter apart, to ensure that we don't catch the droplets and things like that. And that is the public health criteria. But as human beings, we should not restrict ourselves from actually socializing, and that is very, very important. So we need to consistently put the correct message in, because the messaging is the one that frames our thought, frames our intention, as well as to position what we do on a daily basis. So if you have any thoughts on this, especially those who are joining us, I really invite you to have some comments so that we can get your perspective. So before that, maybe I will do a quick shout out. So thank you, Dr. Mike, for coming on again. All right, nice to see you. Okay, we also have Zorab. Zorab, welcome back. And I also want to take this opportunity to congratulate Zorab, because Zorab celebrated his first year in operations as a solopreneur. Well done, well done. Welcome, join the club, right? Great on you. And also thank you, brother Ted Moy, my good friend. Okay, and yes, he put there physical distancing but social support. All right. So that is where I wanted to maybe look at it. Yeah, that was with Verticka. So maybe I will just move on quickly to maybe Rifki. So we have Rifki with us last Thursday on the 7th of May, and Rifki gave a good perspective on particularly a few pertinent things happening.
Sure. So Rifki, we had him.
Go ahead, man.
Yeah, go ahead. Rifki, we had him on the episode 19, which was on the 7th of May last week. And he touched on several things. He talked about the area of domestic consumption and micropreneurs and how they have been severely virus and the impact on the economy at large. And as you know, fundamental contributors to the Indonesian economy would be these micropreneurs, simply because of the size and the magnitude of this particular segment. He also went up, and I was very impressed. He went out and he talked about some of the key advice that he would give to business owners. And 3-4 things came out to mind. The first one was relook at the value that business owners brought to the table, business owners brought to the market in this regard. The second one that he looked at was the area of cash burn. Make sure that you're able to maintain, and this is cash preservation, the mantra that we've been always talking about. And those he felt who would succeed and survive this will come out significantly stronger. And the third one that he talked about was the area of portfolio reevaluation. Look at the risk appetite that these businesses had, that the business owners had, and relook at what would be an ultimate ideal portfolio given the current risk in the environment. Now, what was also intriguing was he went on to talk about this from an employee's perspective. And what Rifki mentioned quite clearly was we need to keep ourselves active. We need to keep ourselves productive for the purposes of the organization. Otherwise, out of sight, out of mind. And that's where other things will start playing out. The other one he talked about was the ability to talk of remote team management. That's the second thing that was important. And we're seeing this now playing out more so given what was discussed yesterday and announced yesterday by the Prime Minister for another 4 weeks. The third one that he talked about was through conscious collaboration. Don't do it because we have to, but do it because we genuinely want to. And it's a vested interest in both parties. The fourth one he talked about was financial management as an individual and making sure that we go out there to do the right things for ourselves and our family, cut costs where we can, tighten the budget where we can. And lastly was reskilling. And that's a fundamental theme that I've been seeing across the last couple of weeks that we've been talking to people. Mui Han?
So one thing that I think I particularly empathize, as I think he brought it in, and I can feel it because as Malaysian, this is really in our face, and it's very clear cut, is this whole idea that we are in the holy month of Ramadan during a lockdown COVID season. Because if we are all very familiar, a lot of businesses are very dependent on this season to generate what they call their extra sales and revenue in a lot of sense, because a lot of times the spending for a lot of consumer products, as well as even sales campaigns and things like that happen in this month, you know. So it's not only just particularly for our Muslim friends and business associate, but it's also for the entire nation. And I think with that, our Malaysian market and Indonesian market, I think more so in Indonesia in that case, share this particular. So it becomes, I think, as an individual, I really empathize with the challenges that the community is facing, especially those who have been gearing up. So I just talked to my ex-boss this morning. He called up this guy after retiring. He went on to have this part-time job to do roasting of lamb, you know. So he's quite skillful, from the factory floor. He's very systematic and process driven. And since he retired, I think coming to 7 years now, he's been doing lamb roasting for open houses and things like that. And in the Raya month, as well as the Ramadan month and the Raya month itself, they can go all the way up to 100 to 200 lambs during this season. Per se, you know, and this guy one night can do like 20, 30, depending on how big the open house is. So he said this year is zero. Since the lockdown happened, since MCO is zero. And it's going to be challenging because the collaboration he has with the people that he work with, they easily have 70 to 80 packs of people just to coordinate this big effort. So a lot of folks will be impacted for sure, and that's when I think Rifki said that that particularly came out very strongly for me, at least, right? So let's move on to our last guest for the week, and we had this pleasure of hosting Ratanjit all the way from Melbourne, Australia. And I think Ratanjit very interestingly tell us that because of the differences of border controls as well as labor control, the challenges in at least the impact of COVID-19 in that sense is very much mitigated or controlled or managed. So their spread is actually much lower compared even to Malaysia, to Singapore, or to any parts of the Southeast Asia wise. And I think businesses, he shared these few particular points, which besides that, they of course already have been gearing up for this season because of the previous bushfire that was happening for 3 to 6 months that have devastation to their economy. So they have been asked to rethink, think out of the box, to do things very differently, much earlier. Of course, there wasn't a physical lockdown then, but nevertheless, they are much more. I mean, they got the call to change things much earlier than the rest of the world. That's what I wanted to say. And in his case, he said that the whole BCP taking into place and kicking into place to actually mitigate this, and because they were ahead of the curve, I think normalization also happened much faster for them. And just like he was saying that even he runs an event management company, just like 2 months ago or early of the year, everything was physical, you know, nothing. But in the last 2 months, they have run like 5, 6 big digital virtual events, which before that they have zero experience or no inclination to do whatsoever. But because of this situation, they have just pushed themselves and jumped into that gear. So I think the great message is the faster you jump onto it, and then the faster you adapt to it. So I think that was a good lesson for all our businesses in Malaysia or even in Singapore. Don't wait, don't look and see anymore. I think time to look and see is way gone, you know, and the more you look, the worse it becomes. What are your thoughts on that, Taranjeet?
No, absolutely, and I think he summed it up quite nicely with regards to digitization, with regards to using technology here. That I have is whether it's a little bit too early to being offered by the government. My concern there is how long will it take for this stimulus to play out, and what will happen once it finishes. And we are hearing that across the board, Malaysia included. We've got a couple of 100 billion set aside. But very quickly, it's playing out very quickly. And now the question is, how long will it take before we now scratch the bottom of the barrel? Then that's where it behooves to us as business people. What can we now do differently? What is the changing mindset that we can bring to the table? And that, I think, it's critical. We've seen this playing out very nicely for the last 2 weeks, whether it be this regional discussion that we had last week, or even the discussion before that from a sectorial perspective with Dr. Vanita, whether it be in education or social, whether it be out in tech and startups, or Michael Heng out from Singapore. So it's very intriguing. What takeaway I'm getting from this, at least for today's purposes, is there is a common theme that is now playing out. We are not alone. We have never been alone. The only issue is how fast can we rebound? Good point raised by Ratanjit Singh about confidence level of investors. But in my mind, confidence is also dependent on fundamentals. The fundamentals have to be there before confidence comes into play. Mui Han?
So I wanted to just share this very good observation by Dr. Heng. Thank you for posting this. So I'll just read it out. Likely post-COVID-19, people will return to the old normal, which is already gone. So the new normal will be hardly normal at all. And seeing this truth, we could set people to grapple with more effectively with new realities. And I think that is a very, very nicely summed up, even going to shops, I just went to a pharmacies, and upon entry, not only they scan your temperature, and give you disinfectant, but they make you scan a code and register yourself, so they were like on-time tracking in case of anything they need to do contact tracing. And of course, it was in my face to say, should I give my phone number? But yeah, but this is the new new way of doing things. And if we collectively do it, then I think we will faster mitigate all that's necessary. And before it becomes our habit and our lifestyle, and then we won't even feel it anymore in that sense. Right? So I think very well said. All right. I also want to bring in another comment from Surjit Bakwan. So Sujit, I understand you are tuning in all the way from Western Australia, Perth. So thank you for being with us. All right. So you say life is not the same until last year, and then until a vaccine is found, and may take some time. And I think we are right to say that, because I think this hope of looking for the vaccine to make sure that life goes back to normal, it is really more, it creates more uncertainty rather than certainty. So why not we take the current realities into our own hands, and we make sure that we are able to operate, optimize, if not thrive in this environment, rather than to say, oh, let's wait for the vaccine to come, then we are okay, we are back to there. So let's plan for that. So I think that planning may take a long time and very uncertain. But if there's a vaccine tomorrow and it's being discovered, very good for all of us, But if it doesn't happen, don't be despair as well. Let's start thinking of moving on as what we are currently. So at least in Malaysia perspective, and as well as in Singapore, I think we are subjected to some kind of circuit breaker or a lockdown all the way, or a movement control or conditional movement control, whichever you want to call it, all the way up to June. So it's a one whole more month of doing this, and let's make it happen. So don't no longer wait. I think my clear-cut message to everybody, even to myself and to you, Taranjeet, is let's not wait further, because waiting doesn't help us at all, right? So yeah, I think that will be.
No, you're right, and quite honestly, the ship has sailed, Mui Han. Now the question is whether you're on the ship or not, and that's where the issues are. Now, cognizant of time, I think we also need to be mindful about what tomorrow looks like, what the coming week looks like, if I may. Let's talk about
Sure.
this whole notion about tomorrow's discussion. What we will be looking at is a continuation of what corporate restructuring and change management activities will look like. We started this out for the first time about a week, 10 days ago. That was part one, last Monday, if I'm not mistaken. Tomorrow we'll be going into part two. What do we need to think about during the process. When we did it the first time, it was pre-restructuring. Tomorrow we'll be talking about during the restructuring process itself, and it's going to be quite interesting because we will be touching on several particular areas. Mui Han, back to you.
Yeah, so that is happening tomorrow. So please do join us tomorrow at Elephant in the Room, 6 p.m. Malaysian Singapore time. For those viewing us in the region, is 10 a.m. GMT. But what I wanted to really promote was what's going to happen on Wednesday. And this one is going to be very, very interesting. We have reached out to Malaysian undergraduates to invite them to be on the show. So far, we have a few people that have applied. Like I was telling you, not many apply. I think they are very scared, Taranjeet, of being on the spot. But nevertheless, we do have applicants, and we are going to shortlist them by tonight. And we're going to announce who they are on Wednesday. But for the rest of you, what we want to come from is we want to invite you to join us during this show, especially if you are a professional manager or a business owner. Because we want you to help us to also share inputs to these two undergraduates or fresh graduates to be, as well as we will have many hundreds more tuning in the show. So your inputs will be very, very critical to help them to set some realities of how to navigate this very, very different environment post-COVID-19. And for them who are graduating this June, this July, I'm sure they need all the help necessary. So for those managers out there, if you can just spare your time for half an hour on Wednesday, and if you know of your friends who don't mind helping, also pull them to watch this show, especially they have not watched this show before. Please come, ask them to come for a very special show on Wednesday, because on Wednesday, the guest is not going to give you input. In fact, you are going to give the guest input. So we are doing a reverse kind of show on this Wednesday. So we really hope for your participation. So yes, I think with that, we have come to the end of our show, Taranjeet. And as usual, it's been a real pleasure to talk to you as well as to interact with our audience. A quick shout out to also Jordan, Jordan from Malacca, my friend. Yeah, thank you for tuning in. And yes, we are going to go back. We are not going to go back. We are already adapted. And in fact, if you will find that even the vaccine comes, it will no longer be that much of an issue or perspective. So I totally agree. So thank you very much. We will hope to see you tomorrow as we talk about restructuring and change management. Tune in again, 6 p.m. For those Muslim friends, Selamat Berbuka Puasa. And the rest of you, please stay safe.
Bye-bye.